President Trump on his way to a second high-stakes summit with North Korean leader Kim Jong-un. The pair are set to meet later this week in Vietnam. President Trump looking to continue progress made during the first sit-down and is optimistic North Korea will eventually give up its nukes.
I think we can have a very good summit. I think we'll have a very tremendous summit. We want denuclearization, and I think he'll have a country that will set a lot of records for speed in terms of an economy.
Meanwhile, the mainstream media is already trashing Trump and throwing cold water on any positive outcome from the talks.
Is this visit, just for lack of a better word, a romantic visit?
Did the president say that he loved Kim Jong-un again this weekend?
They have this, what,
love and kisses? Did he? I don't know. Did they send each other
It's so disturbing
a
and
Valentine's
dangerous.
card?
My worry, George, is that this negotiation, this summit may be a dud.
You're saying the president's going to get played.
I think the president's just looking for good press. I mean, let's just be frank. He felt like he got a good press after the last one, and he figures another photo op might do that.
Greg, here's how you know how biased the mainstream media is. When he was tough on Kim, then he was going to create a nuclear holocaust. And now when he's engaging with Kim, it's a romance.
Yes. And it's interesting how this criticism is bordering on homophobia. It's the same thing they did with Trump and Putin. Remember, they had them making out. It's like only on the left can you get away with these kinds of slights that they think is somehow humorous. If any of us had done something like that with, say, a liberal like President Obama, we would be...
Who was actually exchanging letters with the Ayatollah and giving them cash.
So here's the thing. You got to address the human rights abuses. You can't just ignore that. But it is possible to pursue the external threats, which are nuclear weapons, separating that from the internal injustices within a country, because that takes that's a longer pace. There are 70-some-odd countries that criminalize homosexuality. We still deal with them. So you can deal with these things separately: the external threat, the internal injustice. But if you conflate them, which is what CNN is doing, putting them together, you will never solve an external threat because you're going to be too busy arguing over what internally is going on in their country. Therefore, you will never, ever be able to, say, reduce the nuclear threat of North Korea, and then every day it'll be January 13th, 2018 in Hawaii with the ballistic missile threat. Can I just go all Jordan Peterson on for a minute?
Whatever that means.
This whole North Korea gambit is audacious and, to most people, absurd. But to get to someplace realistic and practical, you have to start with a fantasy. For example, to get to astronomy, you had to start with astrology. That's what Jordan Peterson's saying. And I do think it needed an apolitical CEO to come up with something so absurd and a simple philosophy of, let's see what happens. Because no one else was going to do this. And so we've all moved on from the absurd notion of engaging North Korea because we're actually seeing progress. So what you're seeing is the beginning of a fantasy to something real. And to Juan, the left should embrace this because you can throw it back at us and go, well, what about free health care? What about the new Green Deal? Those are fantasies that start audaciously and then move to something practical. So in a weird way, Donald Trump is the guy you go to about Green Deals and free health care.
Well, I'm all for it. I'm all for Trump embracing the Green New Deal. But you
see my point, though? You started something crazy,
dude,
and you moved to something good.
Dude, I listen to you. I really do. I really do. I take him seriously.
Of all the people, Juan says, dude.
But I must say, it did sound like you were saying, what's wrong with and I'm sure the people who are Green New Dealers are listening and saying, Greg Gutfeld? Unbelievable.
No, that's my point is that when you have somebody like Trump, you don't know what to expect. This is just one of those things. And to just sit there and keep making jokes like Morning Bozo, it doesn't
But
work.
on the other hand, you do have people, it's not, you guys, you and Jesse say it's the media, but I don't think Dan Coates is the media. Dan Coates is the national security.
Well, he's not saying anything cynical and sarcastic.
No, what
he's
he
just
said
saying
was,
that, yes, they've stopped with the rockets and the nuclear testing, but we haven't seen any progress towards denuclearization, and that's something that they want to accomplish in Vietnam.
But they had pledged to stop the nuclear testing before the first meeting.
I think they're clear-eyed about what to expect from the North Koreans, aren't they? They know this is not a regime that always tells the truth.
The funniest part of that montage for me is that he would be doing this because he's looking for good press. Good press from who? Or these people
Not from Chuck Todd.
already decided that he's going to be a failure. I think he should be careful. I think Trump sometimes talks a little bit too much. much. I think he comes
You
out.
do?
I do. I think he's very optimistic. He wants to come out, and he is the deal maker. He thinks of himself like that. He thinks of himself as someone who's going to get stuff done that other presidents may not have been able to accomplish. In some cases, that's true. But I think when he says these really bold things like, Chairman Kim will make a wise decision, you don't know if he's going to make a wise decision. Don't put that stuff out there. That's like Mexico's going to pay for the wall. Hold back a little bit. It's very easy to just say, look, I'm going in there with the best of intentions. I hope for denuclearization. It's going to be good for their economy. I hope they take my side on this. I don't know what's going to happen. Let's hope for the best and see how it goes. When you make those statements, it makes you feel then obligated to cave a little bit to get a deal done, because it doesn't do him any justice. So I would just say be a little more cautious about it. Know who you're dealing with. Know that this is a dictator that's not always reliable, that does hide missile sites. It's not like you're dealing with an ally here. You're not. And just hold some of that back. And obviously, no matter what he does, the media is going to rail against him. If he didn't go, he would be someone who didn't care about diplomacy. So he can't win with them regardless. That's a big joke. But just for the people who support him, hold it back a little bit.
Jesse, I have to go out of character here.
Oh, boy.
You're going to tell the truth?
This Trump bashing at this table has to stop. I just can't believe it.
Katie,
I can't
change that.
Look, I don't think that when he says he will make this decision about economic prosperity that he's expecting it. He's giving Kim Jong-un a choice. He's saying this is the only choice for you. We're putting this on the table. We are not coming in militarily right now, even though I put that option on the table before. But this is really the choice that you should make. And he knows exactly who he's dealing with. He knows he's dealing with a dictator who loves movies, who loves Western culture, who loves Western sports. And he's trying to incentivize him to say, look, you can be a Western superpower. You can engage in all of these new cultural things for your country without having regime change. We're not talking about taking you out, man. We're just saying you can stay as long as you decide to embrace these cultural norms, clean it up a little bit, stop threatening us, and then we can move forward. But eventually, the White House is going to get impatient. The president has said that he's not in a hurry, he's not on a timeline, but eventually they're going to want something in return other than just stopping the missile testing. And that is something that the second summit will hopefully provide. And him talking to him and saying, look, we've had this agreement. You've exchanged no missile testing, but now it's time to talk about your nuclear program. And the intelligence community does say that you are still building sites, you're not getting rid of them, and it's about time that you stop doing those things. Because we're doing this in good faith, and you seem not to be doing it in return.
I think you have to be skeptical, of course, about this. It would be crazy if you weren't skeptical. But again, people were skeptical about the moonshot, right? And when people talk about going to Mars, that's crazy. But people think about this. You think about these things. Ending the Korean War. We weren't talking about ending the Korean War 2 years ago. That's going to happen. The Korean War is going to end, and and that has a lot to do with this insane process. This is a foreign policy moonshot. It's going to take time. I think the Korean War could take decades, but we know it's going that way.
So I was skeptical about George Clooney's tequila.
Yeah.
That turns out it's pretty good tequila.
There you go. See, we can all change our minds.
We can. But I must say, what are we putting on the table is what you hear from people in Washington. They say, oh, so we're going to end the Korean War? For what? We're going to give you a diplomatic
what do you need?
station
well,
in North Korea?
I'll tell you what we're not doing.
Hold on.
Okay.
This is what they're talking about. The possibility that we recognize North Korea as a nuclear state. Why would we do that? I mean, you have Gina Haspel at CIA, you have Dan Coates saying these guys have no intention to abandon their nuclear ambitions.
I'll tell you what we're not going to do.
What?
We're not going to send them pallets and
Cash
pallets of cash
and gold
in the dead of night.
We didn't do it.
No,
We've never done
we did
that.
it with Iran. Remember that deal? All right.
It was shift in a minute.
Student activists confronting Senator Feinstein over the Green New Deal, and it doesn't really go their way.
Because there's no way to pay for it. I've been doing this for 30 years. I know what I'm doing.
Office to demand she back the Green New Deal.
Some scientists have said that we have 12 years to turn this around.
Well, it's not going to get turned around in 10 years. What we can do,
Senator, if this doesn't get turned around in 10 years, you're looking at the faces of the people who are going to be living with these consequences.
The government is supposed to be for the people and by the people.
But for once, an adult wasn't having it. Feinstein spoke truth to toddlers.
because there's no way to pay for it. I've been doing this for 30 years. I know what I'm doing. You come in here and you say it has to be my way or the highway. I don't respond to that. I've gotten elected. I just ran. I was elected by almost 1 million vote plurality, and I know what I'm doing. So, you know, maybe people should listen a little bit.
Oh, my goodness. She's about 5 minutes away from telling them to get out of her yard. But what does that remind you of? When Feinstein says to the kids, there's no way to pay for it, she sounds exactly like a Republican talking to a Democrat. Finally, the sketcher is on the other foot. Now, I'm sure some people thought Feinstein was too mean to the kids, who were no doubt parroting slogans programmed by adults who see the kids as conduits for the latest left-wing software. But the truth hurts, and if you're going to use a kid as a political shield, you put them in the way of the truth. More important, if you don't feel a little gross when you see kids used as props, there's something wrong with you. Mind you, these kids are pushing a plan that bans fossil fuels in 10 years. Do you think in a few years they'll feel the same way when they get their learner's permit? But don't blame them. It's the parents, the teachers, the activists. They know that their untenable political positions require propagandized pawns to survive. And you got to get the pawns when they're young, and then hope and pray they don't grow out of your stupid ideas. Jesse, I'm going to start off and say that this works on both sides. I can't stand kids on the left, brats on the right. Do you remember?
You can't stand kids.
I can't stand kids. Do you remember Jonathan Crone? Does that ring a bell?
Yeah.
This kid was all over Fox.
Was he spoke at CPAC?
Yeah, he was like 13, right-winger. He was just, they were trying to get
interviewed him.
Of course you did. They tried to get him on Red Eye. I said no. I go, he's not on Red Eye ever, because I know it's gross.
And now he's a lefty.
Yeah, he's a lefty.
Works for Salon.
Yeah. But he's actually a decent reporter. He goes to Syria. He's actually become somewhat of an individual.
So maybe these kids are going to turn out to be conservatives.
Just like you, Jesse.
That's just like me.
Those are little Jessies.
Listen, you know, these kids have bedtimes. They shouldn't be running U.S. industrial policy. They can't even play with matches. You know, and all of a sudden she's supposed to say, "Oh, you're right. Great point, Susie. Let me go tell my staff we're all going to die in 12 years." It's funny how she handled it. It's kind of like a grandparent during Thanksgiving when the grandchild comes home from college and they start talking about global warming, and the grandparent's like, "It's freezing. We're going to Naples in 2 weeks. What are you talking about?" So I think there's two things going on here. One, on the left, when you're wrong, you get promoted. For instance, Al Gore said all the polar ice caps were going to melt by 2014. Well, they're still there. And what's her name? AOC says the world's going to end in 2030, but I bet we wake up in 2030 and she's even more powerful. It's called failing up. And what's also happening in the Democratic Party, it's now split into three groups, Greg. You have the adults, and you have the children, and the adults pretending to be children in order to win the election. The adults are like the Schultzes and the Feinsteins that know the thing's a scam. The children are like the AOC and the Bernies that actually believe this stuff. And then you have the adults pretending to be children to get elected, like Booker and Feinstein, that know it can't work, but they pander to these people in order to get votes.
Yeah.
Well, let's throw to just one more piece of tape from that little meeting. This is my favorite part.
We're the people who voted you. You're supposed to listen to us. That's your
How old are you?
job.
How old
I'm
are you?
16. I
Well,
can't
you didn't vote for me.
Well, I'm 24.
It doesn't matter. We're the ones who's going to be impacted.
Reality check from Diane.
It's not just somebody who's had it. I mean, you didn't vote for me, so get out of here.
You're 16, you can't vote yet? Or are you one of my illegal voters in California? Maybe that was it. But Jesse, kids can't play with matches, at least those ones, because they emit carbon dioxide.
Oh, that's right.
And actually help, you know.
We are anti-arson here.
But I can tell you, as a child who won a recycling art contest when I was like 9.
Oh, my God.
I can tell you this is all indoctrination. And AOC got on her YouTube or whatever, her live feed and was talking about how the world was going to end and we had to do something about it, which proves that these people believe in so much government that they think government is the only response to any of this, or we're all going to die. These predictions have made before. In 1970, Paul Ehrlich predicted that 65 million Americans were just going to die off as a result of the environment. Well, that never happened. And so this is indoctrination. It's a leftist group that came into her office with a special interest project. They used kids to do it. And I thought she reacted pretty well.
We've mentioned AOC. I try to keep our portions of AOC down to 5%. But Fox are all like, no, throw the AOC out there. This is her talking about like what you should do in an apocalyptic scenario that we're facing now. Sorry.
The issue's gotten worse. So I don't think that working on an issue for 30 years alone is what qualifies is what makes someone qualified to solve an issue. So it's basically like there's scientific consensus that the lives of children are going to be very difficult. And it does lead, I think, young people to have a legitimate question. You know, is it okay to still have children?
I agree with her, Juan.
I think you do.
You know I do.
Yes, you
She's
do.
saying all of her peers don't have kids. I'm saying nobody. Because kids just get in my way, Juan.
Is that right?
Yes.
And they emit greenhouse gases.
Oh, sometimes involuntarily.
Yes.
All over you.
Yeah. So, by the way,
diapers are
I
up.
think that some of the polarized caps are melting. I caution
Well, he
you.
said they were all going to melt.
Yeah,
Juan.
but I just got to say,
They're polarized.
I think Greg was trying to save you guys because things like Turning Points USA, March Light, boy, a lot of young kids who are out there and used as the face of that
They're
conservative.
adults, Juan.
No, they're
They're
adults
adults in
I can tell you,
college.
a
They're
lot
not
of them are
10-year-olds.
high school and college kids, and they don't vote.
They're not 10-year-olds.
These are babies.
But let me just say,
These are babies.
No, I thought Senator Feinstein, who I have tremendous respect for, know her, like her very much, had an opportunity to engage those young people. Now, I must say, I spoke at a high school
did,
this
in a
morning,
realistic
and you know
form.
what I said to them? I said, you guys don't vote. You don't give money. And that's what the senator was saying. You don't vote. You don't give money. But that's a
was
pretty
telling them it's
cynical
too
thing to say to
expensive.
young people who are becoming politically engaged, who are making a visit to Washington, a visit to their senator. She missed an opportunity.
I agree.
She knew it was a trap.
But
What's the trap? There's no
the trap is that you have a bunch of kids
No, you
there
talk to
reading
them.
rehearsed talking points. You have a grown adult standing right there. This happens all the time in schools. I worked at a school. You have an adult or a moderator or a dean or whatever it is, and they want their agenda pushed, so they hand kids a bunch of propaganda,
That's
and then the
fine.
kids repeat
Excuse
it.
me.
She knew it. She was
You-
standing there saying this is a big
If those
joke.
kids came to
Yeah.
you or to me, Jedediah,
Yeah.
I think we could hold on to our positions that had been worked through, but at the
That's
same
also
time,
edited,
hold
Juan.
on.
That's edited.
At the same time, make those young people feel special.
Juan,
And she didn't do that.
I would have said to those young people.
adults are lying to those kids and
Why are
Dianne
they
Feinstein
lying?
because they're telling them this is what they can do. It's totally reasonable, and she's the only adult who's actually told them the truth.
She's saying
She
we
didn't-
can't pay
no,
for
no.
it.
Okay.
I disagree
for
with
it.
if you consider her truth.
And feelings are not
It's
the-
because her truth agrees with you, Kate.
No, you want to have this discussion on feelings, and she was being honest
No,
about the
I'm
cost.
just saying, young people, those kids, they should be told that it makes a difference. If you go
She
see your
said
elected
that. But
representative,
she said,
they will listen to
Juan,
you.
she said, I'm putting forth important climate legislation, but we can't pay for this. She doesn't want them
Well,
to be
that's not true.
delusional.
That's
She's
right.
not-
They
she's
said the kids were going to be
delusional.
alive in 12 years. That's a bad thing?
No, that's a good thing.
Think
Because
about,
that
telling
beats
your
Greg's
kids.
Greg said he doesn't want any kids.
no
think
more
about-
grandkids for you.
Think about
Juan.
what kind of parent tells their child, you're going to be dead in 12 years.
Right.
That's a great parent. The other thing, too, is I'll go. But I think that using kids is a way to avoid a real debate. If I put a kid up here in front of me, you don't give your best foot forward. You can't argue with a kid. So maybe every Democrat should bring a child up onto the debate stand. That would be great. Have the child. That'd be
Wait a second. You mean I can't bring Jesse to work anymore? Hey, I've been bringing you to work. Good I thought so.
on a leash, too.
all right.
Is Hillary considering a 2020 run? A former staffer says there's one reason she may enter the race.
Money from wealthy donors. But Senator Elizabeth Warren now promising to end that. She says she will no longer hold fundraisers or even take phone calls from rich campaign contributors. This as Bernie Sanders continues to face criticism for his use of a private jet during the 2016 campaign. A Clinton campaign staffer saying, quote, His Royal Majesty King Bernie Sanders would only deign to leave his plush D.C. office or his brand new second home on the lake if he was flown around on a cushy private jet like a billionaire master of the universe. My, my, my. Meanwhile, another former Clinton advisor saying Hillary could still get into the 2020 race.
I think it depends upon how the field is shaping up. I think if the party looks too far to the left and there's no front runner, she'll get in. I think if Joe Biden gets in, that probably means she won't run if he gets in. If he doesn't get in, I think the field will be open for her.
Wow, Jedediah,
Oh, God.
are you quaking?
I can't take Hillary 2.0. I can't do it. I really can't. Haven't we suffered enough? No, but Warren is the best, saying, oh, I can't take money. Now, even if you agree with her and you're rich, she doesn't want your money. So I'm curious, though, because with these left-wingers, they always say that their goal is to get you out of poverty, to lift you out of poverty. So at what point, when they lift you out of poverty, do you hit an income level where you're now the bad guy, where they don't want any part of you? What's wrong with someone if somebody had a lot of money, worked their way up the ladder, and happened to be in line with Elizabeth Warren's ideology and wanted to support her. What is wrong with that? What about that twist, sir? I really want to know. Do you know?
Yeah, I think I have an answer that at a time of income inequality, plutocrats are not popular with working people, especially people on the left.
Leave Pluto out of this.
No, wait, hold on a second,
Take Pluto out of it. So, Jesse, I think that what she's doing is trying to shame other Democrats. She's saying, hey, you other Democrats who are taking money from the big boys and from Wall Street, you're going to get hit.
Well, you remember the cartoon where Elmer Fudd would try to trap Bugs Bunny, and he'd set a trap, and then Bugs would run around, and Elmer would actually get caught in his own trap?
Yes.
That's what's happening with the Democrats. They're laying traps for Republicans, and then they're stepping in it. How are you going to raise money from poor people? I mean, she doesn't understand economics. Obviously, she doesn't understand math either. How are you going to raise money from people that don't have money? So, and she can't talk to rich people. Is she going to hire a homeless guy and say, hey, buddy, take the elevator up to the penthouse, tell Soros X, Y, and Z? It doesn't even make any sense. Bernie is now going to not fly private. What's he going to get stuck on the tarmac on a commercial flight and miss his rally because there's maintenance on the aircraft? Look at these other people. Kamala Harris says she wants to get rid of Columbus Day and replace it with Indigenous Peoples Day. There goes the Italian vote. What is she thinking? You're not going to kiss a baby because you need consent from the baby now? It's so stupid. The Democrats are actually becoming more funny and entertaining than Donald Trump.
That was great.
That was quite a monologue.
So, Katie, I'm thinking to myself, though,
I don't want to
that,
follow
in fact,
that, but sure.
Yeah, he was good. But I'm just thinking to myself, in fact, contrary to what Jesse said, last week Bernie Sanders raised $6 million bucks in one day. It was pretty impressive.
First of all, I'm wondering if Elizabeth Warren's going to stop taking phone calls from herself because she's worth millions and millions of dollars, right? So how do you prove, actually, that you're not taking money from rich people? She first should give up all of her millions and redistribute her own wealth if she's really going to hold herself to this campaign promise. She's trying to distinguish herself from the other Democrats in a very crowded field. Bernie Sanders has her beat by a lot. He got 250,000 plus donations worth $27 apiece. So he's got the grassroots cred when it comes to real people, middle class, working class, the poor, Jesse, donating to his campaign, whereas she keeps trying to find these things that haven't been really her forte in the past, but she's trying to distinguish herself in a crowded field.
I think, by the way, Bernie said he got the average donation was $27.
Yeah,
that's really impressive. But I think we should wait for Greg on Bernie flying around.
Okay, so the thing is, his defense for 342,000 miles of private air jet use is it's the best way to get around the country, or the best way we can get around the country. He's right, because, as you said, you can leave whenever you want if you have to get somewhere. But this defense applies for everybody using private jets. It is the best way to get around because there are no lines, and there's no TSA, there's nothing. So the only way to what Sanders is saying is the only way to escape the punitive hand of government force is to be part of the government force. The only way for a socialist to enjoy life is to be the socialist in power. It's better to be Santa than to be in Santa's workshop. But when the Democrats become Santa, America is Santa's workshop. We're all working for the fat man in the beard.
These are rich people living the lives of rich people, vilifying other rich people because it sounds good. This is so dumb.
And implementing policies that keep other people from becoming rich.
Right. Only them? They're all the only ones allowed to make money?
The best part is, it allows us to educate people on the differences between capitalism, a free market system, and socialism, centralism, centralized government versus decentralized, all that stuff. So I think it's really helpful when this stuff comes up. But rather than calling them names, you got to nail them for what they believe in.
Yeah, but I think they believe in that there's too much income inequality. But
they haven't proved it. They haven't proved it.
You guys,
I've always destroyed that argument, Juan.
All right, let me destroy your argument. There's too much too big to fail in this country. And when you guys
platitude,
you don't talk about the big hedge funds that are closing plants in the Midwest. You don't talk about guys who are just making money because they're.
I talk about that all the time. You just never listen.
Can we still call them names, Greg?
What? Yes,
I
we
want
can.
to call them names.
I want to call Juan a name.
There we go. Here we go. Chicago's chief of police, he's calling names, dropping another bombshell in the Jussie Smollett case.
Presented quite a bit. I mean, legal experts said that's the most that they've seen being presented up front like that.
But there's still a lot of physical evidence, video evidence, and testimony that just simply doesn't support his version of what happened.
They have the goods. And after being criticized for rushing to judgment on Smollett, DNC Chair Tom Perez is defending 2020 Democrats.
If the allegations that have come out in recent days are true, it's unconscionable because hate crimes, the fact of the matter, are on the rise. We acted on the facts as we knew at the time. And here are the facts that we know today. Hate crimes are on the rise.
All right, I'm going to ask for a gut-filled fact check. Are hate crimes on the rise?
We've talked about this a lot here. What's important is you need to look at the increase in the rate of incidents, not in the increase in number, because the increase in number is due to more reporting, and they added 1,000 agencies. So to validate their work, they say it's an increase in number, but it's not increasing the rate. Actually, if you look at the rate, it's on the decline. The rate of incidents was higher, I think, maybe 14, 15 years ago than today. So the good news is they're actually in the decline. It's hate crimes on the way up. What I want to the Smollett thing that nobody has talked about is if the Smollett thing had not been debunked last week, could you have imagined the Oscars last night?
Oh, God.
Do you know how he would have had an opening speech? They would have had him singing instead of Lambert in front of Queen. The Oscars would be 3 hours of Smollett. But instead, and this is the amazing thing, no one mentioned him, and and it's because they couldn't bear to look at that story because they were staring into a mirror. And Hollywood only wants to look at a mirror if they see what they like or if there's a Coke line on it.
Well, in all honesty, I don't think anybody knew who Smollett was before.
That's true.
Last week. But anyway, let me just say this.
Maybe. Well, two Trump supporters did.
Oh, there you go. Yes, but you and I have been over these numbers from the FBI, and you keep saying that, oh, you know, this is not true. It's absolutely true. There's been a spike in hate crimes.
Yeah, but you never point out what it is.
Yes, it is. And
Where?
It's 17%.
Yes, and
from 1 year to the next. And here's the thing that you're wrong on. You keep saying, oh, it's because they increased the number of people reporting by
1,000 agencies.
Only, but remember, Greg, the universe here was 5,000, so it's up to 6,000.
Okay. Right.
And you still
That's 17%.
Just a minute. And you still, it's the case that only 12% of the law enforcement agencies in the country are reporting to FBI about hate crimes. So
it's not a rate of increase.
Most agencies don't even report.
It's not a rate of increase.
And we know that many people are ashamed to report.
Greg,
no one is ashamed.
Greg, you made a rookie mistake. You never get into an argument about facts with Juan.
Thank you.
It's never going to turn out right.
Yeah, I agree, because he didn't have the facts.
No, mine is correct. It's about the rate of increase.
I feel like I'm going to hear this conversation in my dreams, you guys.
If you're lucky.
Okay, so let's go back
Can you imagine you and me and her drink that? I don't think you just stay asleep.
We'll be shirtless on unicorns.
Shirtless on unicorns.
I'm so frightened. That's like my night. Are you kidding me?
Back to the Good Morning America interview with the superintendent of police from Chicago, contrasting that interview with the first interview that Jussie Smollett did with Good Morning America, claiming that this happened, saying that if you don't believe him, you're a racist.
Yeah.
The media contrast there is
well, and she had to give this interview because the first one, I mean, I think she really wanted him to come out looking strong and like he was telling the truth, and it looked like that to many people. So now she came back and said, okay, we have to give a fair shot here. I have to talk about Perez, though, because he reminds me of what's wrong with the country. People have no shame. That guy is not embarrassed to represent the DNC and to say we acted on the facts as we knew at the time. What facts did you have? You had one guy's story at the time. You didn't know if it was true. You didn't bother to wait until the local police did their investigation. You came out. So he's suggesting that there's justification that if anybody out there makes an allegation about anything and says it and puts that front and center, you're supposed to run a whole bunch of media reports. Democrats can come out. Democrats running for president can come out and comment on it. They were calling it a modern-day lynching when people haven't even run an investigation. That is different from TV commentators. This is the guy who's running the DNC. He should be humiliated. There is no shame left.
I would just say that the media led the Democrats over a cliff on this one, and Donald Trump can just say, these guys have poor instincts. I have great instincts, and they guessed wrong, and as president, I would guess right now. Look what the point, no, look at the terror attack situation. Whenever there's a terror attack, and someone yells Allah Akbar, and everybody really knows the truth, the media, very reticent there, always want to wait till the facts come out. But if there's a hate crime and Trump people involved, lightning fast to convict.
Oh, yeah, that's why we're paying so much attention to that Coast Guard guy. Oh,
By the way, Trump did send out a tweet about everything.
Kavanaugh, Covington. I mean, it's getting to be funny.
We got to go. Bill Maher taking a shot at red state Americans. His absurd comments ahead next on The Five.
Welcome back. Well, Bill Maher is mocking Americans who live in the middle of the country, claiming they're jealous of blue states. Take a look.
The most affluent and educated people are clustered in just a few cities. The blue parts of America are having a big prosperity party, while that big sea of red feels like their invitation got lost in the mail. The flyover states have become the passed-over states. That's why red state voters are so pissed off. They don't hate us. They want to be us. They want to go to the party.
Lovely. You know, Juan, I got to say, there's a denseness on the left, hopefully not with you, but this is why Trump won. I don't know how many times we have to say it. When you insult whole sections of the country and then, you know, maybe pull a Hillary and don't even campaign there, this is not a good strategy. Why do they think this is going to work with anyone outside of the top of the top of the top most elitists in maybe New York and Los Angeles? Washington, D.C.
What?
No, I was just looking at the lower third. Never mind.
What did it say? Wait. What did it say?
It said high snobiety.
Whoever wrote that.
Hi, snob.
Man.
Snobbity, my man, snobbity. All right. So two things to say. One is you could make the interpretation that, in fact, he's saying, hey, Amazon, go locate in the middle of the country, go to Red America, to areas where there isn't that kind of economic activity, go there. That's one way, and that would be a more generous interpretation
much more
than the one that you
I
offer. But the second thing to say is that, you know, a lot of times there's just, I think people like me don't understand. How can a third of the country remain, no matter what happens, just remain locked into Trump? And so people do ask questions. What's
well, that's what we say about New York City, Juan.
That's
what we say about New York City.
What do you mean?
No matter what, they all love Democrats.
Is that right?
Yeah, that's right.
It's like New York values, Ted Cruz?
Sure.
I don't know.
No, it is. It's the same thing. What we're talking about really is a mirror. What Bill Maher is doing shorthand is exactly what we do when we talk about California and New York being the left coasts. He's doing the same thing, but his sin is using references from 1980 when he says that the red states are Chef Boyardee and the blue states are Wolfgang Puck. He might as well say, well, the blue states are Maude and the red states are all in the family. He's out of touch. The coolest towns in America right now are Marfa in Texas, Boise, Idaho, Nashville, Tennessee, Butte, Montana. The best eating and music isn't in Brentwood, California, hardly. Culture's been democratized. He just never leaves his house.
Well, and Hollywood always goes to red states to film their movies because the economics are better for them. And places like California and New York actually have the largest, to Juan's point, wealth disparity between rich and poor in the country. California is actually a poverty-stricken place that is fueled by the socialist programs that they've implemented over the years. New York, you can make the same argument. So this idea that middle America is jealous of California and New York, that they aren't, because people are fleeing California, fleeing New York. The governor of New York is complaining about not having enough tax revenue because people are leaving. The numbers just don't add up.
He was talking about, Jesse, Bill Maher was the guy in 2013 talking about how the taxes were so high, getting so high in California, that they might drive him out. So he knows full well that these policies in a lot of these blue states are just stifling people to death and driving them out.
Yeah, everyone's leaving for Texas and Florida, and I don't think red state people are angry. It's the left that's like lighting things on fire and punching people in the face and screaming at the sky. And I don't even know what the definition of educated is, because when I've done Waters Worlds, Venice Beach, Manhattan, those people are the oblivious ones. You mentioned food. You can go to a restaurant in Iowa and get a locally procured ribeye, perfectly cooked for about $20. You go to a Michelin-rated restaurant in Southern California, you pay $70 for a little filet that big.
That's
and who's leaving that hungry?
That's right, because rich often defines for me how much you can actually get with your money. And educated doesn't mean, whether you went to an Ivy League school. People around me in New York, I'm the first person to say I grew up not learning how to do basic things. I can't change a tire. Yeah. I can't build a fire.
We love the poorly educated.
It's true. I mean, people around the country know how to. It's a different kind of smart. One's not better or worse. I don't appreciate it.
Time now for one more thing. Breaking nutrition news. This goes against everything anybody believes about food. New study.
Oh, boy.
Studies are always right.
Yes.
Nutritionist Chelsea O'Mara from New York City says a piece of pizza is more healthy for breakfast than a bowl of cereal.
Of course it is.
They say pizza has more protein and pizza has less sugar.
Yes.
And she's not recommending you eat pizza for breakfast, but it's a better option than a bowl of cereal.
That's because cereal's not it's all corn syrup
and sugar. Yeah. Sugar.
Really? Is she comparing this to Captain Crunch?
Yeah.
Well,
maybe not Honey Nut Cheerios.
Cereal's like a waste.
All right, Greg.
Also, both pizza and Captain Crunch, they burn your mouth. You remember your skin falls off?
Captain Crunch doesn't burn your mouth.
You've never had Captain Crunch
scratches
mouth?
your mouth. It scratches
all
your
right.
mouth.
Oh, they're a sponsor, Greg, so watch out.
It's time for Greg's Cat Off. You know the rules. I play 3 cat videos and the panel votes on the best one. Let's go to number 1. Cat video number 1. Look at him get a little scratch. Does that feel good, huh? Look at him. He's never felt anything better. Oh, that's great. All right, I've had enough of this adorable little brat. Let's go to the next one. Here we've got, it looks like we've walked in on something, haven't we? Uh-oh. And then he notices it. Now he's getting a little frozen up. It's like, hey, can't you guys leave us alone? We are in love. We are in love. Oh, God. Get a room, you cats. And look at this one. Everything in slow motion is 10 times better, including a fluffy cat. Oh, there you go.
In slow motion.
Yeah, that would. Sometimes I feel like it is.
That's because you've had a lot to drink.
That's true. Vote.
Cat massage 1.
Number 1.
Number 1.
Number 1.
I was going to go with number 2 with the intimate.
You're sick.
Thing. Yes, because I'm a freak.
You're a little dirty.
All right,
Juan Williams.
All right, so spring training's underway in Florida and Arizona, and I'm getting excited, to be honest. So here's an early tease for my fellow baseball fans. Take a look at this. Watch Danielle Gibson of the Arkansas Razorbacks. She made history with 4 at-bats in the first 4 innings. Look at this. Yes, there's a way. The 6-foot Gibson is only the 2nd Division I softball player to hit a solo homer, followed by a 2-run homer, followed by a 3-run homer, and then a grand slam. Oh. No major league player has ever done that. Wow, congratulations.
Pitcher's having a rough day. Rough day for the pitcher. Okay, so a Scottish woman she was in Australia, and she saw a snake slithering around her room. So she went to look for it, couldn't find it. Then she flew all the way home, 9,000-mile flight. She unpacked, and there was a python inside of one of her shoes.
Wow.
And it survived the luggage under the plane because it's cold-blooded.
Snakes on a plane. I got to say it, people. I got to say it, huh?
And really scary, so if you see a snake, take it seriously and find it before it kills you. Okay, I will be at CPAC on Friday, speaking at 11 a.m. I'm moderating a panel on foreign policy. See you there.
All right, Jedediah.
I'm traumatized by that snake now. I don't know if I can do this. All right, I have to congratulate Mitzi. Mitzi has just been adopted. Once dubbed Britain's fattest cat, used to be 17 pounds, now 11 pounds. Finally found a permanent home after being returned to the same shelter 4 times for different reasons. And just to add in, 17 pounds isn't that big for a cat. My parents have a cat that's
eating them out of house and home.
Eating them out of house and home. But congratulations to Mitzi. Beautiful story. Yeah. Happy ending for her forever.
Maybe now the cat can make out with another cat.
Yeah, there you go.
Do you think they make that thing for humans?
I was thinking about that.
I'll get you one after the show. Set your DVRs. Never miss an episode of The Five. Special report is up next. Chris Wallace.
You know what, Jesse? Animals really are great.
They are.